Dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. I hope that you all enjoyed the spectacular collection of the Mauritshuis and the dinner last night at the beautiful Sociëteit te Witte. On behalf of the European Affairs Committees of the Senate and the House of Representatives, my colleague, Senator Thue Elsinga, and I warmly welcome you to the Hall of Knights for this COSAC Chairpersons meeting. This hall was built by Count Floris V by the end of the 13th century as the center of court of Holland. Since then, this building had many different purposes over the centuries. For example, during the Dutch Republic, which ended shortly after the French Revolution, it was a court of law and a venue for drawing the winning tickets of the States Lottery. Parliament has met in the building complex that's part of this hall since 1814. Since 1904, the annual state opening of Parliament and speech from the throne takes place in this hall. Behind you, you see King Willem Alexander's throne and a smaller throne for his wife, Queen Maxima. I would like to invite the President of the Senate, Ms. Broekers-Knol, who would like to welcome you on behalf of our Parliament to take the floor. The floor is yours, Madam President.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, excellencies, van harte welkom.
A warm welcome.
Herzlich willkommen, benvenuti, bienvenidos. A warm welcome to you all on behalf of the Senate and the House of Representatives of the Netherlands. For those of you who might be hoping that I will continue this speech in 6 different languages, I'm afraid I have to disappoint you. There are not many people who can manage that, apart from the first Vice President of the European Commission, Frans Timmermans. But many years ago, at one of the COSAC chair meetings, I met a fellow parliamentarian who actually did master many languages. I admired him for his command of 6 languages, including his native tongue. He then explained to me that he learned all these languages through his various marriages. Slightly taken aback, I could only remark that that is a very complicated and expensive way to learn a foreign language and become multilingual. However, it shows that COSAC meetings are never dull and they provide you with information of an unexpected, diverse nature. As for today, I am happy to say that we can rely on excellent interpreters, so I will continue this speech in English. As you might have gathered, I've been a member of the Dutch COSAC delegation in the past, before I was elected President of the Senate in 2013. For 10 years, I took part in COSAC meetings all over Europe, chair and plenary, and I've always found this platform to be of great value. I therefore consider it a great honor and a pleasure to address you all this morning and to officially welcome you to the first conference of the Dutch Parliamentary Dimension. Committees on European affairs play a vital role in making sure that national parliaments perform their the task of scrutinizing European legislation effectively and maintaining the political dialogue with Brussels. In order to achieve this, it is vital that national parliaments maintain good relations and a strong cooperation amongst each other and with the European Parliament. As parliamentarians, we all have a joint responsibility to bridge the gap between EU citizens and the EU. We have a responsibility to secure democratic and transparent EU decision-making and to safeguard checks and balances within our own member states as well as in Brussels. Although the role of national parliaments and the European Parliament in the EU has strengthened since the Lisbon Treaty, there is still a lot to be done to improve the way national parliaments deal with European policy and the way national parliaments and the European Parliament cooperate. I'm very glad that in this meeting you will examine the Europol case as an example of how cooperation on a European level works in practice. It is a worthwhile exercise to look at practical ways in which we can improve our cooperation and exchange best practices. Interparliamentary conferences like the one we are having today are a valuable instrument to us all, as they allow parliamentarians to meet with one another face to face. They are about direct communication, about making contact and discussing issues that concern all of us. By doing that, we learn from one another. And more importantly, we learn to better understand each other's points of view, which works to the benefit of the citizens of the EU member states. Europe is currently facing many challenges. Having only barely recovered from the economic and financial crisis, we are now dealing with the refugee crisis, while at the same time trying to keep all member states within the Union, doing our utmost to keep on bolstering the economy and protecting ourselves against a rising number of terrorist attacks. Europe faces instability, conflict, and disrupted societies at its borders. So it is of vital importance that we find a way to protect and safeguard our free, open, democratic society, and that we stand firm to uphold the rule of law. Today, we will not find a solution for the many challenges that face Europe, but we will exchange opinions and form connections that can end up proving invaluable in creating the common ground that Europe so desperately needs. When it comes to meeting with one another face to face and having an open exchange of views, technology can be of great help. We therefore decided to slightly upgrade the level of innovation. For instance, by creating an app where you can find all necessary documents and information. It even offers a chat function that allows you to send each other short messages. We believe innovation can enhance a lively debate and make it easier for participants to contact each other directly. As Mr. AZMANI just mentioned, the hall in which we are hosting this conference is 800 years old. It forms the historic heart of Dutch democracy and is therefore the perfect place for parliamentarians to meet, learn from each other, and better understand each other's point of view. The fact that we have filled this hall up with new, innovative ways of communication, for me, symbolizes European cooperation, respecting historic ties that bind us together and at the same time finding new, effective ways of working together. If we can manage that, we can work together to make the European Union sustainable for future generations to the benefit of all. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam President. If your schedule allows, please join us. And thank you also, Ms. Ariep, our President of the House of Representatives in the Netherlands, that you're also with us. Before we continue, I particularly welcome those chairpersons who were elected to these roles since last time. Ms. Isabella Klok, Chair of the European Affairs Committee of the Sejm of the Republic of Poland. Thank you very much. And Ms. Mette Gjerskov, Chair of the European Affairs Committee in the Danish Parliament, the Folketing. Welcome. Dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, the Dutch presidency has taken off well now. On January the 7th, we have received the European Commission in the Senate. A number of ministerial councils were held in Amsterdam already, as well as a large number of high-level seminars, conferences and working groups. I think we started this presidency with a strong focus on tackling the most urgent political issues, while also making sure we keep on making progress on the many other files. The migrant crisis and the continued pressure on our borders shows us that the EU faces many challenges and that unity is not always a given. It shows us that the Union is not self-evident and that we must work hard to achieve common solutions for common challenges. Please, we have a shared responsibility to face and solve these challenges. I now would like to inform you on some practical issues. We provide a live stream through our website, parle2016.nl. So anyone is interested in this event can monitor what is being discussed here today. Translation will be provided during the meeting into French, English, Italian, German, and Spanish, in order to accommodate also the hard to hear. And the live stream is also supported by International Sign Language. All documents for this meeting were handed out to all delegations and can be found on the document table. But as a special feature, all documents are also available through the app, Parle 2016 NL, and also available for iOS and Android. And you have also the file on your package. All right, if you decide to inform your followers on Twitter of your presence here at the COSAC, I would like to ask you to use our hashtag, Parle 2016 NL. Then, as a final point, please log in to your device to pressing your name, because otherwise you cannot request the floor. And I see someone who has not logged in yet. Then, as a final point, you have may noticed that we now have speaking cards have been handed out. Of course, this is not because we don't want to hear your views, but you can notify us with the multimedia device in front of you that you would like to request the floor. Let me briefly explain how the device works. If you would like to request the floor, please press the button on the lower right on the device. The microphone color will light up with a green light to indicate that you have requested the floor. Once I give the floor to you, your microphone will light up red and your speaking time will commence. If you have any questions or would like assistance in using this instrument and the app, please ask our support team who will walk around in this room. Perhaps this is a good time to briefly test the system, and may I ask you to press the button for requesting speaking time. And then we can test it. I see a few green lights. Yeah, okay. Everyone? Okay, then I will test it with Mr. Angel of Luxembourg. Mr. Angel, I want to give you the floor.
Thank you very much, Malik, and thank you to both chambers for this wonderful welcome and hospitality. Thank you. And everything seems to work perfectly. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Angel. Thank you for your kind words also. I'm looking forward to have a fruitful discussion this morning. The first item for today is the adoption of the agenda for this meeting. The draft agenda was sent to you in January, and you will find an updated version in the app and on our website, and it can also be found on the document table. The program of today is about how we can improve our cooperation in the scrutiny of the new European legislation and on the priorities for the European Union in the coming year and after. We therefore invited the following external guests: Ms. Kristalina Georgieva, Vice President and European Commissioner for Budget and Human Resources; Mr. Bert Koenders, Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Netherlands; and also Mr. Tom de Bruyn, former permanent representative of the Netherlands in the European Union. In order to give you an insider's perspective on parliamentary scrutiny from different angles, we invited two representatives from national parliaments: Madame Auroy, member of the French National Assembly, and Mr. Yüksel, member of the Belgian House of Representatives. Any comment or remarks? If not, the agenda of the COSAC Chairpersons meeting is hereby approved. Thank you very much. Then we will start this morning with a panel discussion on how we carry out one of the most important tasks, the scrutiny of new EU legislative proposals. We believe that COSAC is a great platform to exchange experiences and best practices with each other on how we do our work. During today's session, we will focus on the following questions. How do we all scrutinize documents and decisions in practice? How do European Affairs committees and standing committees exchange and cooperate with each other? And how are contacts with the European Parliament organized? To answer these questions, we prepared a case study of a recently finished legislative procedure, the Europol regulation. Our idea is not to discuss the content and various political viewpoints, but rather what tools we use as parliaments to let our voices be heard. Through this case, we aim to understand more about each other's work practices and learn from each other. For this panel, we invited two representatives from national parliament to present their action on this file. As a moderator, we ask a former permanent representative to the European Union, Mr. Tom de Bruyn, to lead us in this discussion. We aim to make this session as interactive as possible, and we invite you to share your work on this file with us. Mr. de Bruyn, the floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and it's a privilege for me to be here with you this morning in this very impressive hall, and it's also a pleasure for me to see some old acquaintances in the room. Ladies and gentlemen, for a long time the role of national parliaments in EU decision-making was a rather controversial issue. Indeed, during the history of the European communities and the European Union, for a long time there were, so to speak, two separate areas of democratic legitimacy, the European one and the national one. And on the European scene, it was the European Parliament, supposed to control the European institutions, and on the national scene, the national parliaments controlling their respective governments. National parliaments intervening directly into the European decision-making process was actually a taboo. Now, this all changed gradually and definitely with the Treaty of Lisbon, and particularly with the so-called yellow card. this gives me actually quite some interesting reminders, because I was myself very much involved with the negotiation of this yellow card after the Dutch rejected the constitutional treaty, and we had to renegotiate it, and then the Treaty of Lisbon came about, and one of the main items for the Dutch to change the treaty was indeed the role of national parliaments in EU decision-making. And today, again, it's a very topical issue, because it is one of the constituent elements of the proposal that Mr. Tusk has brought today, last week, on the British question, so to speak. Now, increasingly now, national parliaments make use of the possibility of the Lisbon Treaty to directly influence the decision-making. Still, nevertheless, apart from the yellow card, Article 10 of the Lisbon Treaty still says that national parliaments control the individual member states. And Article 12 of the Lisbon Treaty says, national parliaments contribute actively to the good functioning of the Union. Very interesting. They contribute to the good functioning of the Union. Probably the drafter of that sentence had something in mind. One of the ways in which they contribute is by taking part in interparliamentary cooperation between national parliaments and with the European Parliament, and that's exactly what we are doing today. So these are the topics that we are going to discuss: how national parliaments control their own governments and the instruments they use, both direct and indirect, how we cooperate amongst each other, and how we cooperate with the European Parliament. And we do that, as was already said this morning by the chairman, Mr. AZMANI, we do that with the example of the Europol regulation. Maybe the timeline of that regulation could be shown on the screen. The regulation in question is a direct result of Article 88, paragraph 2 of the Treaty on the Functioning of the European Union, because it says regulations shall also lay down procedures for scrutiny of Europol's activities by the European Parliament together with national parliaments. So this is an interesting case, because it is about the participation of national parliaments in the control of EU agencies, a very important topic indeed. I don't see the timeline. Maybe something went wrong, or
Timeline? Oh, the timeline.
no, on the regulation.
I saw it in the beginning. It was in the beginning.
It was there before. Well, anyhow, here it is again. Here you see actually the most important time moments of that particular regulation. It was proposed by the Commission on the 27th of March 2013. Then in 2014, February, the European Parliament adopted its first reading. In September 2014, there was the opening of the interinstitutional negotiations after the first reading, and finally in November 2015, there was an agreement between the Council and the European Parliament, and hopefully in the course of this year, in April, the regulation will be definitely adopted. An important element in this regulation is a proposal by the European Parliament for the establishment of a so-called joint parliamentary scrutiny group, which you can see in Article 53 of the regulation. So this is the case study that we will treat today and see how national parliaments make use of all their possibilities to scrutinize EU legislation. And perhaps now I may ask Madame Danielle Auroy to come to the floor, and also Mr. Veli Yüksel, and to take a seat at the table at my right-hand side, your left-hand side.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. De Bruin. First of all, I want to say thank you to the President of the Senate and the House of Representatives to join us, and you are also allowed to go.
C'est pas très pratique de prendre la traduction en même temps. Mais...
Oui. Vous allez parler en français?
Oui, je vais parler en français. Langue internationale quand même. Il faut le rappeler régulièrement.
Okay, I'm still here. Sorry.
The Speaker of the House of Senate wants to stay, and of course,
Yes.
it's very terrific that you are here. Thank you. Mr. De Bruin.
Okay, then we will start our discussion, and if you permit me, I would like to start with Madame Danielle Auroy. You have a very long political career, although you started as a teacher, I was told. And you started your political activities at the municipality of Clermont-Ferrand.
Yeah.
So that's something that we share, the local politics, because at this very moment I'm in local politics. You made it the other way around. You went from local politics to Europe, and I went from Europe to local politics. You were a member of the European Parliament from 1999 to 2004, and now you are a member of the French Assemblée Nationale, and you are the chair of the European Affairs Committee.
Yeah.
So, now I would like to ask you, with the example that we have at hand today, your Assemblée Nationale adopted a resolution on the issue of the Europol regulation. Could you maybe explain to us what type of instrument this is and how this is worked out in the Assembly?
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much for inviting me to participate. I would like to answer this first question on Europol, and I shall do so by giving you a bit of historical background. Our National Assembly, which has a European Affairs Committee made up of 48 members of Parliament, began working on this 10 years ago. Under our Constitution, community projects are submitted to us. In Europe, the question of Europol came to us in 2003. We first received an information report, and this enabled us to become more informed. And then we issued a resolution on the future of Europol. It was adopted on the 15th of June 2003. In this resolution, we advocated parliamentary scrutiny over Europol, and this group would be made up of national and European Parliament representatives. This is how we began our work. In the second stage, we had a commission, a report from the European Affairs Committees in December of 2010 on the modalities of scrutiny over Europol's activity. This summarized the positions of the the national parliaments and the European Union. And then we had a second European resolution adopted on the 25th of April 2011 on parliamentary scrutiny over Europol. And finally, in the current legislature, much more recently, in November 2013, we examined an information report on Europol presented by Danuta, who provided the traditional type of information. That is, there was a hearing of the European Affairs Secretary General. This is an interministerial body. They also interviewed the Home Office and Europol officials. On that basis, we made a proposal for a third resolution by the National Assembly in France, adopted on the 20th of December 2013. Amongst other things, this resolution said that we were in favor of setting up a joint committee made up of representatives of the European Parliament and the National Parliament. The French government did not have a hard and fast position on this at the time. The parliaments debate these matters, and the National Assembly, therefore, was an active party in the parliamentary or interparliamentary meeting organized by the Libe Committee in the European Parliament on the 14th of November 2013. We had a very lively debate. There were a number of matters still pending. But overall, when a new discussion takes place on this matter, we put forward a clear proposal. Now, our European Affairs Committee had adopted a resolution, and following the rules, this was sent on to the Legal Committee of the National Assembly, where it was amended somewhat. And now this resolution is considered to be that of the National Assembly and is the authentic text on the basis of which we continue our discussions. Now, the European Affairs Committee of the National Assembly and the chairman of the Libe Committee, Mr. Claude Morange, spoke about this on the 11th of March 2015, so we are continuing our exchange of views. Now, we've received feedback in the National Parliament, in the National Assembly, and we shall continue this debate. As you have noted, we are trying to work together with the European Parliament and also the various committees in the National Assembly and, of course, with our colleagues in the Senate to make sure that we're all au fait of these European subjects.
Very much. I think this is very interesting, first of all, because what you are saying is that you started early, already even in 2003. And then you, as a Committee of European Affairs, you had the lead in the organization of the work. You cooperated with the other commissions in the Assemblée Nationale. And then finally, your resolution was adopted by the Assembly in its entirety. What is also interesting is that you cooperated in an early stage with the European Parliament, not only with your own ministers, but also with the experts from Europol. Could I ask you, are there any other type of instruments that you use in the French Assembly to deal with European legislation?
Oui, bien sûr, il y a.
Yes, of course, there are other instruments. Europol was an example. I would like to mention another point. Whenever we have proposals for resolutions to express National Assembly views on Europe, we work with two rapporteurs, one from the majority, one from the opposition. So we work on the basis of compromises. This is a very special, important concept for European institutions. It's a bit less traditional in France, to say the least. So that's one of the specific features that we're trying to develop. Secondly, we are also attempting to raise awareness amongst our national colleagues as much as we can, because our resolutions on European matters are based as early as possible, as was the case with Europol, and then we submit them to the other relevant committees. So at this time, and we've seen this just a few days ago on the question of the COP21, we actually involve 4 committees in this process: the European Affairs, Foreign Affairs, the Economic Committee, and the Sustainable Development Committee. All of them are involved, and that means that European subjects feed into national debate more and more. This is a tool that we use. Members of the French National Assembly like to use this tool. we often have a meeting to discuss government questions. These are the current topics that we're discussing. Before European Councils, these questions these meetings focus on European matters. I know it's a bit complicated, but it has become part of our habits. And this, as I say, feeds into our debates. And over the last year and a half, it has been possible systematically to interview, prior to European Councils, the relevant ministers, not only the European affairs ministers, we meet with them a lot, but the relevant ministers for the subjects of the day. And we discuss these matters with them prior to the Council. This is informal, but we have these meetings, and then we have the report of these meetings, and we're able to inform our French colleagues on what has been envisaged, what has emerged from the Council subsequently after the Council meetings, and we'll do the same with the question of Brexit or immigration. So this is very important, and recently we have begun using resolutions prior to Council. So the National Assembly expresses its positions through these resolutions, and these are officially expressed. And for that purpose, we hold our debates, and it's important to mention that we always have guests at all of our meetings. We invite our French and European colleagues. We often have joint meetings of the Senate, the National Assembly, and the French members of the European Parliament. And this is the way that we make sure that we discuss European matters within the National Assembly.
Retain that you use the instrument of the rapporteurs, one from the opposition, one from the government. I think now in the parliament in the Netherlands, in the second chamber, there's also the possibility to establish a rapporteur, but only one, if I'm not mistaken, not from the opposition and the government. So more a technical one. But that's interesting, the institution of rapporteurs, and then you have the instrument of what I would call question time on issues, European issues that play at the day and that in the actuality of the political debate you can question the ministers concerned. Okay. Now, slightly off track, I would like to ask you a very different question, which has nothing to do with the Europol case, but still which would be interesting, I think, for this debate. The French Parliament has been quite active in the coming about of the so-called Article 13 in the Fiscal Compact. That's, of course, a completely different issue, but still, I think, a very, very interesting development in the role of national parliaments in controlling European policy. And I would like to ask you your experience with the implementation of Article 13, and maybe even a daring question. Do you believe that Article 13 would constitute a sort of birth certificate for a new special parliament for the Eurozone?
Excellente question.
Excellent question.
Alors,
Yes, on Article 13. We are amongst those who were originally backing this proposal so that Article 13 could be put into practice in Europe. I think this is important quite simply because, as we will see in a moment, whenever there is a dialogue amongst the European parliamentarians and the national parliamentarians on European subjects, and if we don't leave it up to the executive bodies, at the end of the day, we demonstrate that the representatives of European citizens are paying attention at all levels on all subjects. So this is absolutely vital. This also demonstrates that we do not have a European Parliament which is distant from citizens and a national parliament which is close to citizens. No, we are showing that the greater our dialogue with one another, whilst respecting the prerogatives of each side, the greater hope we have of demonstrating that the representatives of the European citizens are paying careful attention to the matters that are within their remit. And in the case of Article 13, we know that these are sensitive issues related to national budgets and also the way that national budgets contribute to European structures. And now we have adopted a regulation which enables us to speak to the relevant commissioners and the relevant ministers whenever necessary, and they are able to explain matters and intervene. And we make sure that we discuss these subjects at the right time during the European semester in the presidency country quite often. And this enables us to ask questions on very sensitive issues, such as the financial transaction tax. You didn't mention that, which would provide an autonomous budget to the European Union. Is this a good idea? Is it not? We discussed this. And in the long run, as we see it, if we had a structure such as a Parliament of the Eurozone, the idea would be to give greater visibility for the benefit of the citizens about what is happening in this economic area. And we feel that this would be part and parcel of democracy. So we think it's a good idea. It needs to make progress. It mustn't be a way of sidelining the European Parliament. On the contrary, in this case, the European Parliament will demonstrate its ability to take initiatives on this type of subject, which we believe is the best way to proceed. The better our dialogue amongst parliamentarians, the more we are able to contribute to a less technocratic and more democratic oversight of what is being prepared.
And indeed, you mentioned the European semester. That could possibly be another topic to see how national parliaments deal with the European semester, because that's not an easy subject at all. But that's not for today, that's for another conference. Now, wrapping up, could you say that, for example, the instrument of your resolution, would that constitute a best practice in terms of controlling your national government? Or would you say it's more the total sum of all the instruments that you have that make a good scrutiny?
Well, I would say both, really. You see, resolutions are extremely important. They do provide content and meaning, and they are recognized by our government. And of course, they also make sure that European subjects are dealt with at national level. In France, we tend to deal more with French issues, so it's absolutely vital for European issues to be dealt with as well, and I'm sure that that's not the case only in France. This is a personal view, but I think it's worth mentioning. And then when we organize interparliamentary meetings, and we did this on the European Prosecutor's Office last year. We met in Paris, and all the member states of the European Union came together with members of the European Parliament. And we emphasize the fact that when we raise European questions, these are close to the citizens. These are important subjects. And let me take advantage of this opportunity to say that on the 18th of May, we are organizing a new similar meeting in Paris on two sensitive issues. First of all, seconded workers, detached workers, that is. All of us have to deal with this matter. And also the question of corporate social responsibility, CSR. France has begun studying this following the financial report. And we see that at national level, European level, and international level, the question of corporate social responsibility and transparency are subjects that we all need to deal with. And as I say, the more debates we have, the greater dialogue we have amongst various parliamentarians, the better we can understand the situation. And we are in a better position to promote European directives on the one hand, and also to present a more consistent view in international organizations of the European view, and not just present national views.
That's clear. It's important, you say, that you cooperate and that there's a dialogue between the different parliamentarians in order to exchange views. Merci beaucoup, Madame. Now, maybe before I turn to Mr. Yüksel, would that lead to any reactions from the room? Is there anyone who would like to react on one of the topics that Madame Auroi has raised? Did I see a hand there? No, that was a hand doing something else. Marc, you will help me to to start the debate.
Well, I want to thank Danielle for her presentation. And since in my country we also read and understand French, heard the documents, we follow them very closely, and it's always a very good source of inspiration for us. But I also want to thank the Assemblée Nationale for organizing these interparliamentary meetings. I've been present to the meeting of the Parquet Européen, of the European prosecutor, which was a very interesting meeting, and I encourage the French Parliament to continue on that way. But since I have the floor, maybe I want to come in on Europol. There is, you know that the Luxembourgish presidency has to organize the Speakers Conference, which will take place in May. And there is one agenda point on the Speakers Conference where all the presidents of our national parliaments and the European Parliament gather on the 23rd and 24th of May. And there is one session on the role of national parliaments and the scrutiny of Europol is also on the agenda. And I think all the work we have done here should come together there, and they should address the question of this joint parliamentary scrutiny group, so that this subject, they maybe have also an authority to discuss together and to come up with to debate with their colleague, with the President of the European Parliament, to finally come to a solution, or to bring a solution closer. I think that is also an opportunity. Yes. So I think this is very good that we have this subject here. It gives input to our speakers for that conference. So thank you for giving me the floor. And what I also want to underline, what I found very interesting, what Danielle said, that it's important that in her committee they meet with the European members of parliament. Exactly. And we do the same in Luxembourg. Every time my committee comes together, and we do it on Monday morning when the MEPs are free, and they come and join us, and that's very important that we get this contact. We know what they are doing, and they know what we are doing, and we also try, but that's very difficult, to send them in the select committees. But these committees are taking place during the week, so it's a bit difficult. But I think it's important that there is interconnection between the MEPs and the national members of parliament. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Marc Angel, and I think that's a very valuable comment. Connect the European Parliament and the national parliaments as often as possible to exchange these views. Now there is another request for the floor. Danuta HUEBNER.
Thank you very much. I'm using this machinery, but still it just has to see me that I am asking, so I don't know if machinery is working. I hope it is. Well, thank you. I probably will never be able to be as nice and polite as Marc, but I would like to thank you very much also for this topic, for this invitation. I would like to start with referring to what Danielle Auroi has just said, because I think Danielle is already has made herself famous in European Parliament for her activity, not only on the French territory, but she also brings people from the Assembly, from her committee to European Parliament for informal meetings. And this is this informal channel also being used, so not through institutional channels which are open in a concrete situation, but also going beyond that is very important. But I would like also to say a few words on behalf of European Parliament on the issue which is here under the discussion, because I think you have, thank you to the presidency and my congratulations, you have made an extremely wise choice of the topic to discuss this issue for, I think, for two reasons. One is the obvious one, because it's of fundamental importance for Europe if we want to face up and to solve the problems that we must solve in the years to come. But it is also a very good choice, because I think we see clearly that there is a lot of good practice in how we handled it, and there is, I think, a lot to learn from the experience of this joint work on Europol between the national and European parliaments. And it is important because there will be more issues in the years to come that will require this kind of double legitimacy. And that's why learning from everything we are doing now is so important. I would also like to say that in the European Parliament, the LIBE committee, I think, has taken very seriously this Article 88 of the treaty, which says that for the supervision of Europol, we have to work together. And I think what we were doing actually, it was good to have it in the treaty, but what we were doing was to find practical solutions for the Europol scrutinizing activities, and that LIBE, in fact, has invited the national parliaments, but also national parliaments responded very positively, and this is, I think, what should be really appreciated. And the challenge now is, Tom, that we are not done with this. There is still a lot of work to do to really operationalize this joint scrutiny group. And let me just finish I know it's done, my time is gone, but let me just finish with a more general statement, because I hope that we will get results also in the sense that in the first report that will come from Europol to national parliaments, to European Parliament, we will really see that more member states share the information, because this is our main problem today. So I hope that all the solutions related to how we will operate, that they will truly lead to this change, which I think without sharing the information we will not solve the problems we are facing. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Danuta. I think that's very good advice. Exchange of information is crucial for the Parliament, but also for the committee that will be established under Europol to function properly. And I liked your reference to double legitimacy. Now, turning to Mr. Yüksel. You started as a journalist. That's not very often that journalists go into politics, but there are some examples, and you're a very good one. You became first a member of the Parliament of Flanders, and then you went